by the time you hear this, you will know the NBA All-Star starters. Next week, we will know the All-Star reserve. So a few appetizers before the trade deadline comes. And you and I reacted to NBA All-Star voting returns last week. And I think it's a natural progression of things for us to talk about who we want to see on the roster. Our starters might be off from what actually happens, but Kyle and I both jotted down our 12 starters, East and West. I said, let's just go conference by conference. We can go back and forth there. I'll let you obviously take the mic first with the Eastern Conference, your starters and your reserves. And I guess maybe we can go back next week and see, or 2 weeks from now, and see how accurate we are with our projections.
All right, so I'll start with the starters, then I'll swing it back to you. In the Eastern Conference, I had Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt. The other guard spot was really, really tough, man.
Yeah.
And the voting really put, you know what, actually, let me take a step back in general. Picking the guards for the Eastern Conference All-Star team, I'm not kidding. I probably sat here for 30 minutes trying to break down who deserves to be in, who deserves to be out. In the front court is very lackluster this year. So I was almost having a moment of I wish I had more spots available to fill in some of these guards, because there are a lot of front court guys who I'm kind of yeah, I'll throw you in there. Where guards, I'm really having a hard time cutting them out. But, so Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt starter. The other backcourt spot, this is a tough one because LaMelo Ball is so far ahead of everybody in terms of the fan vote. I don't know if he's going to get it. He wouldn't be my pick as a starter if it was, just me picking the starting lineup, because the Hornets are nowhere near the playoffs. But I was really having a hard time between Trae Young and Cade Cunningham for that second starting guard spot. I ended up eventually going Trae Young. And my reasoning for that is because he has the Hawks, and Cade has the Pistons playing at a really high level as well. But the Hawks are a team that have knocked off the Celtics twice. They have knocked off the Cavs twice. They continue to give the best teams in the league their best shot. They've already beaten the Bucks. The list kind of goes on. And Trae, to me, is someone who the last couple of years has been the odd man out when it comes to the All-Star rosters. And the dude was the first player in NBA history to average, I think it was 25 points and 10 assists and not make the All-Star team. And it feels like
crazy.
He is always the guy to be squeezed out. I'm not squeezing out Trae Young this year. I'm making him a starter. So I had Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young as my starting backcourt. And then I think the front court is pretty much going to be unanimous for the Eastern Conference. Yeah. I had Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Karl Anthony Towns. I personally don't think there's much debate there. I don't know if you had anybody different in the East. I want to hear who your East starting backcourt was, because I have a feeling your front court was the same.
Yeah, front court exactly the same, so no point in wasting time with that Tatum, Giannis, Cat. But in that backcourt, I had Donovan Mitchell, and I went through it all. I kind of shuffled through it. It's hard. The LaMelo thing makes it difficult, obviously, as we said, with the voting and stuff. I ultimately went Jalen Brunson. He's been playing. He's coming on strong lately. I saw that meme that Knicks fans are circulating where this is the time of the year where Jalen Brunson starts to look like the best player in the world. Obviously, he's not the best player in the world, but he looks like it on a lot of nights. And thinking about where the Knicks are in the Eastern Conference standings, I won't necessarily say that they have underachieved, but it's not necessarily flooring people with where they are, but they've just been consistently solid throughout the year, and he has been a driving force behind that. So I gave him a little bit of credit, from what he's been doing as of late, maybe a little what have you done for me lately, and also me kind of trying to take both sides of predicting what will happen, just given where he landed in fan voting and also the body of work that he's put in with the Knicks this season. So Jalen Brunson's in there. It was tough to give LaMelo that squeeze, but it had to be done.
Yeah, and then, Jalen Brunson was the first guard that I had. Well, actually, that's not true. I had Cade Cunningham as the first guard as reserves for me, just because, again, I think he is playing at such a ridiculously high level this year. And for the Pistons to be as bad as they were last year and then look as comparable as they do this year in being a team that, should be a playoff team, whether it's play-in or playoff. If they, can crack the top six, they're knocking on the door behind the Hawks right now in the standings. Cade deserves to be there for me. Jalen Brunson was my other reserve guard spot, so I agree with you on that. And then the front court's a little tricky because, I had Jaylen Brown, I had Evan Mobley, and then I had Franz Wagner, who that might be a little controversial, but he played 25 games in the first half of the season. And in those 25 games, he was the sole reason that the Magic stayed afloat the entire time that Paolo Banchero was out. Now, you're going to have to find an injury replacement for Franz Wagner. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky again, because now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the injury replacement can be any position.
Any position, yep.
Any position. All right, so I'm going to get back to that in a second, bouncing around a little bit here. 2 wild card spots. I had Tyler Harrow because for the same reason, the Heat have been an absolute disaster, and he is the reason that they're staying afloat. And I had LaMelo Ball, who I think that just based off numbers and popularity, he's going to get in.
Got to give the people what they want.
That means, right, exactly. He's the type of player that, you want to see playing an all-star game. So that means if you've been kind of crossing out your own list in your mind, Darius Garland was not one of my all-star reserves. And that was a really, really tough decision to make because obviously he's been incredible. I wasn't ready to give the Cavs 3, maybe 4 guys before I gave other teams 1. And, you could argue maybe LaMelo doesn't deserve to be in there because the Hornets haven't been playing well enough and Garland deserves that spot, whatever it is. But that's where I'm like, all right, with Franz Wagner, deserves to be recognized to be an all-star. He's going to get a replacement. Now that's on Commissioner Adam Silver. Am I going to put in Jared Allen or am I going to put in Darius Garland? Positionless, I'm going Garland. If it has to be a forward, going Jared Allen, and the Cavs get their due diligence of having 3 all-stars for having the best record in the NBA.
Man, yeah, it's tough when you said that and listening to what you said kind of puts you back in that position of like the backcourt, front court balance. Like, man, there are guys in the Western Conference who I wish that they were just in the Eastern Conference. It'd be a no-brainer because the front court is loaded on that side of things. But I'm going to run through it. It's guard heavy still. I said LaMelo like you because I feel like you can't have a guy as popular as he is and just not give him the nod. It's not like his numbers don't measure up to his popularity. Right. So LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, who you have starting, I have obviously Cade Cunningham, and I'm just naming guards. The 3 bigs was difficult for me, and I wasn't even thinking about giving an injured guy the nod. Where Franz Wagner, great choice for that. I went with the forward alternate, and I do have a bunch of Cavs here. I did go Mobley and Allen and Jaylen Brown, just because, again, like it's just kind of tough. Like, who else do you do just given the injuries? Like, Paolo Banchero barely played in very many games. Thinking about who was popular, like Jimmy hasn't played at an all-star level. Joel Embiid hasn't played this season. So, again, very difficult. And it is, like, for some extenuating circumstances in the Eastern Conference. And I think there's one name I haven't said yet, and it's another Cav. I wasn't trying to give the Cavs 4 all-stars. I don't necessarily think they will get 4 all-stars, but I did go Darius Garland here. Again, I just think it's the people who are most deserving. And Cade Cunningham, I think, is the big one, right? Who, like, we've seen him make that leap and have that coming of age season. And Trae, again, gets a squeeze out of the starting lineup. But otherwise, I think the biggest takeaway from this is just it's really hard given the balance of front court and back court guys in the Eastern Conference. But thankfully, Cade is as big of a guard as he is where the roster won't really feel imbalanced having him as a technically guard guy because he does play guard, but he has, a plus guard size.
Yeah, that's obviously excluding names like Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard. Those were the 3 guards that kind of got squeezed out on my end from the front court side. Nikola Vucevic, for what it's worth, is having an incredible season. He's not going to be an all-star, but he's having an incredible season from the front court side. Porzingis has played well when he's in the lineup. The Celtics haven't had a good enough record to get 3 all-stars, in my opinion. One player who I really, really think that if he didn't get hurt right around the time of all-star voting, he would have gotten more recognition for being a potential all-star, and that's Jalen Johnson.
I knew you got Jalen Johnson.
He's having an insane season for the Hawks, and he's a huge reason why they've been as successful as they have been. And again, like, I'm not saying he should be an all-star, but he at least deserves to be mentioned along with the snubs. But yeah, I think, like, for me, the toughest decision that I had to make was squeezing out Darius Garland. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like, how the hell do you have Tyler Harrow as an all-star over Darius Garland? And, hey, maybe that's how you feel. But, like, to me, it's just one of those situations where the Cavs have 4 guys who deserve to be all-stars. It's easier to be an all-star in the front court in the East this year than it is in the back court. They're going to get either Mobley or Allen. And then if you have to have an injury replacement for someone like Franz Wagner, it's probably going to be Mobley or Allen, filling front court for front court. So maybe DG gets squeezed out, whether that's right or wrong. And hey, you know what? If he's an all-star, I'm going to be super happy for him because he deserves it. I'm just saying this is the way that things were shaking out when I was lining it up myself.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's difficult. And I appreciate you saying that because we always say, okay, you think somebody was snubbed? Okay, who are you taking out for him? And to have that kind of conversation, I think just given this, my biggest takeaway is once we get this next week and once we learn about the full 12 all-star members of each all-star roster, which again, I think it's a good point with an injured guy potentially getting in there despite missing time. That body of work, that 25-game body of work is definitely one. And again, Jalen Johnson is another guy who I didn't necessarily think about he wasn't on the front of mind because, like you said, the injury has kind of kept him out of the lineup, and we haven't really been seeing what he's been doing lately. We're gonna jump to a quick break, and then we will get into the Western Conference All-Stars. Maybe a little bit easier on that side of things. I don't know, but we'll talk through it because there are a lot of guys who deserve it based on name, but also body of work, and finding that balance between those two things made the exercise a little bit more difficult for me. So we'll throw it to a quick break and we'll get back to it.